All right, all right. Hello, everybody. This is Darren. I seem to be in some kind of dark land here. Let me try to get a little light here. All right. Anyway, hey, everybody. Good to see you. We are here with Matthew on Mondays. We are going to be taking a look at Matthew 13 again. This time with a little bit different of a parable. We're looking at the wheat and the weeds, or the wheat and the tares. I think that's I don't remember why that's the version I know, but anyway. All right, let me see if I can pull this up and we'll take a look at it. So we're in Matthew 13, 24 through 30, and then I think there's an explanation at 36, right? So all right, I think I've sent the emails to folks now to get the chat, to get the link. So I think I can go ahead and jump right in here. Let me share the screen and find. All right, can you see that? I'm going to try to get rid of the, get rid of the ad there. All right. He put before them another parable. The kingdom of heaven may be compared to someone who sowed good seed in his field. But while everybody was asleep, an enemy came and sowed weeds among the wheat and then went away. So when the plants came up and bore grain, then the weeds appeared as well. And the slaves of the householder came and said to him, Master, do you not sow good seed in your field? Where then did these weeds come from? He answered, An enemy has done this. The slave said to him, Then do you want us to go and gather them? But he replied, No, for in gathering the weeds you would uproot the wheat along with them. Let both of them grow together until the harvest. And at harvest time, I will tell the reapers, Collect the weeds first and bind them in bundles to be burned, but gather the wheat into my barn. All right. You can see there's a few more parables in between, but here is the explanation of the parable of the weeds and the wheat. Then he left the crowds and went into the house, and his disciples approached him, saying, Explain to us the parable of the weeds of the field. He answered, The one who sows the good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world, and the good seed are the children of the kingdom. The weeds are the children of the evil one, and the enemy who sowed them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the age, and the reapers are angels. Just as the weeds are collected and burned up with fire, so it will be at the end of the age. The Son of Man will send his angels, and they will collect out of his kingdom all causes of sin and all evildoers, and they will throw them into the furnace of fire, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Then the righteous will shine like the sun in the kingdom of their Father. Let anyone with ears listen. All right. Okay. Just a quick reminder here as we get started, waiting for Mark, and I think Marcy's going to be here as well, waiting for them to show up. If you have any questions or comments about the text and you're watching along, you can write something in the chat on Facebook, or you can make a comment on YouTube, or make a comment either place, however you want to do that. And we should be able to see it and try to respond. So if you have a question or comment, please go ahead and just put it in the appropriate comment section. That would be wonderful. All right. So in preparing to preach on this text, or in preparing to hear this text preached, well, I think we'll save the difficult part of the end there for later. But let's see. I see Mark is coming in, so let me let Mark come in and save me. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh,
How are
good.
you doing?
All right, good.
Yeah, I just got as far as reading it, and I hadn't started any further than that. So
Okay, all
you're
right,
right on time.
right on time, right on time. Yeah, it's interesting little parable here. I wish I think for these texts, it's really good to understand, first century agriculture. That will help make the text make a lot of sense. I was hoping the commentaries would go more into that, but
Right.
unfortunately they didn't. Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. Do you have a book that's a reference that talks about uh, for biblical agriculture? Or talk more about that.
Not in the sense that I think that you're asking about. There is a really, good like text in that deals with the agricultural nature of the Bible in
Okay.
general,
Okay.
which is uh, let me see if I can look it up real quick. What's a good thing to look it up on that doesn't advertise for any of our nefarious people in the world? All right. I think this is the publisher's website, so that can't be too bad, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Um,
Shouldn't be.
yeah, so it's you can't really see that, can you?
Yeah, I can't see that too good.
All right, so
Scripture.
yeah.
That scripture something.
All right,
Scripture,
it's
culture, and agriculture.
yeah,
Okay.
Scripture, Culture, and it's by Ellen Davis, who's an Old Testament scholar at well, I don't know if she's still around. She was at Duke for a long time, but
Okay.
yeah, it's quite. I've read parts of it. It's quite good. And then of course the foreword is by Wendell Berry. I don't know if you know. He's a
No.
fairly famous kind of poet essayist that's has like a little farm in Kentucky and is a very kind of naturalist kind of guy,
Okay.
but also has a kind of a spiritual religious background as well. So,
Okay.
but
Okay.
no, but this in general, doesn't dive in, to each thing so much, but in just getting a kind of wrapping your head around the cultural kind of the culture of the agricultural society of the time, I think is
Okay.
a helpful. It's
Okay.
a helpful.
Because I think as we read this text, I think remember what William Jennings says that we're what do you say we're third. What was the term to use? We're not third century. We're removed.
Right.
Yeah. And I think that because we're reading it from a 21st century, many times urban perspective, not having, I'm a city boy. I don't know
Right.
much
Right.
about farming and planning at all, but having a better understanding of the nature of the text really will help these texts really to speak to us in a
Right.
more potent
Right.
manner.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. I
Yeah.
think you're right about that.
Yeah.
Um, I think maybe people don't bother because there's the explanation afterwards. So, with some of these, when it
Yeah,
has the
well,
explanation,
it is, but
you're like, yeah, whatever.
yeah, but the explanation is also based on somebody
Right.
who's a first century agricultural person too. So again, we're reading it like city people. So whatever.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and I think again, like some of the comments in this book, the gospel and solentiname about with the Nicaraguan
yeah,
campesinos, some of them in the comments that they make, are like this one says, as a sower, I know from experience that the weed is more resistant and the good plant is delicate. That's why we can't pull up the weeds until the other plant is strong.
yeah,
That's what happens now with injustice, which is stronger than justice. We have to hope that at first justice will develop more.
yeah, yeah,
Which,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I guess getting into this parable, I think it was Carter talked about one of the distinctions between this parable and the past parable was in the first parable we looked at last week. the main character was a person of lower social economic means. This person's got some money.
Right.
He's
Right.
got some assets because he owns. I'm assuming he owns this property, and he has servants. So this is a person of means. So we're
Right.
coming from a little bit different social economic perspective here.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I guess one of the good things about this parable is that how the owner relates to his servants. He seems to relate to them in a respectable manner and listens to their feedback.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Kind of hearing like a little ding or something, but I don't know if it's coming.
Well, I think Marcy's in Texas.
Oh, maybe that's yeah.
Oh, she said she was having trouble connecting to try. She'll try another device. So she's having some
okay.
technology issues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
I have them all the time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that I mean, this is the classic kind of situation where we know that. Well, I mean, I know, like, just in the church in general, you run into people in the church that you think these folks got some work to do. I'm not sure who planted them here.
Yeah.
Certainly not in my current church.
Yeah.
Saying, not you guys know better. You guys know, not in this one, but others.
So I guess looking at that aspect of the text, as Jesus told this parable, and he tells it from a different perspective of, oh, there she is. Hey, good evening.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Hope
Okay.
Hope was good. You didn't share nothing with us.
Well, it was so good. I was so hungry. Oh, I wolfed it down. Sorry.
People do that. They talk about, oh, I made something good. It was so good.
Sorry.
I know. I'm sitting over here with I got to eat one square of my little cut up toast here that I. I might be sneaking a little more in the midst of our. I'm going to let you guys take over in a minute so I can have a little bite to eat. But
we were just saying, Marcy, that that this parable has a little bit different perspective. Last week's parable, the person who was the main character or the center of the story was a person of lower socioeconomic means.
Right.
This person's got some. He
right.
got some bucks.
Got some money. Yeah, he's much more financially.
He's a baller and shot caller.
Yeah. This was really different this week. I think I've just read briefly a few commentaries, and there seemed to be some different perspective. Well, I won't say that, but there was a couple of them really emphasized kind of the patience of God, that God can be patient and that we are quick to fix things.
Right.
And then not always recognizing that our desire to fix things sometimes makes things worse.
Right. Right.
So but then I read someone else that said, if any commentary leads you on that path, that is wrong. What? Because our job is to go out there and fix things. And so I thought,
wow.
Well, okay.
It's interesting that he was have a conversation, because I'm clearly, like you said, to me, one of the things that jumps out of this passage is the issue of patience. Now, I think we have to talk. We can talk about, when we talk about being patient and waiting. There's a passive waiting and there's an active waiting.
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the passive waiting is just sitting back. I'm gonna just sit back, kick my heels, and watch this stuff grow, and I'm just gonna see what happens. But the passive, the active waiting is being more involved in terms of changing things. So
Right.
it's interesting to see how they focus on this idea of patience.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's important to note that you're still, even within this context, you have to still cultivate the good seed, right? I mean,
Right.
even
Right.
if you're just
Right.
letting the weeds grow,
Yeah.
you still have to do what you have to do to cultivate,
Right.
the good.
Yeah.
And of course, the day is coming when you've got to separate them.
Right.
Right.
So,
Right.
I mean, and what I guess what the other thing interesting, I mean, thinking about this, is that the parable's interesting because the everyone is clear about the weeds. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like no one
Right.
is confused
No.
about
Yep.
what the
Right.
about what the weeds are.
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
Neither the
everybody gets
servant nor
that.
the master. Right. Yep.
It's
They
just
know
what
it.
to do about them in the meantime.
Yeah.
Right.
Like
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, I think it was, I can't remember if it was Carter or Winter's case that talked about the unreadiness maybe inside the community of, that the reason why this parable is being told is that there's certain unreadiness, and I guess that applies to us too, that some of us are a little a little unready, or a little I won't say leer. I guess the word would be unready in terms of accepting the challenge of what it means to be a part of the kingdom. And then well, I think I can't. Maybe I think it was Winter case, and that God allows time. The time to think about time, and he's like you talked about, Darren. That you have to cultivate. So part of that allowing time is that there's active training, teaching, cultivation, however you want to look at it. So folks, so that the wheat can grow and mature.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I do. I mean,
Yeah.
I do like that. I'll read it again since I don't know if you were here, Marcy, but I think
No.
this. We got to this thinking about just trying to figure out, looking at it from the context of people who might actually have some agricultural experience. But this is from someone from the Gospel in Solentiname. So one of the campesinos there. And he says, as a sower, I know from experience that the weed is more resistant, but the good plant is delicate. That's why we can't pull up the weeds until the other plant is strong. That's what happens now with injustice, which is stronger than justice. We have to hope that at first justice will develop more. So I think he's also giving a, how there's still work there, right? There's still the work of what you're saying of educating, of cultivating the sense of what justice is or what justice looks like. That maybe if you tried to set things right before it was quite ready, or before the right time, you would upset the whole thing.
The balance. Yeah.
And I think that's one of my, I'm gonna use the word frustrations with how sometimes in the church, and I can't speak. I mean, I speak of a Black Baptist church, whatever. That sometimes we are not as focused on the educational ministry as I think we should be, because we talk about this whole development, cultivating piece, because that's what the educational ministry is supposed to do. And I think sometimes we spend more of our time, energy, and resources sometimes on Sunday morning. Well, I'm not saying Sunday morning worship is not important, but I've always felt that what you do during the week prepares you for Sunday morning. And sometimes like folks feel like it's the opposite. But to me, what happens during the week in terms of the education, whether and the ministry that happens during the week, the pastoral care, all that during the week, that leads up to Sunday morning. And I think sometimes we just don't spend the time or the resources in doing that piece. I mean, that's my thought. I don't know how y'all feel.
Well, I mean, and you know, we have to be realistic about who would be interested in taking part. Taking part in it, even if we did. Even if we did offer it, you know. I mean, and not really by any fault of anyone's, you know, that they wouldn't have time, because I mean, the whole world is set up so that they don't have time,
right,
to consider and think about, you know, these things. You know, the world is designed for the weeds, you know.
Wow, yeah.
I mean, the system is set up for the weeds, you know.
No, that's a very interesting statement there.
Yeah.
That's something to think about.
Yeah. Because what's the I'm trying to think of what.
I'm trying to find.
I was just thinking, you know, I mean, he doesn't use the, because I mean, often the devil is called the ruler of this world, right? You know.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Where am I? I'm trying to find.
I wish I could.
I'm trying to pull up. Did you that guy that writes Left Behind and Loving It?
Oh, okay.
Mark Davis.
I know what you're talking about.
Left Behind and Loving It.
Yeah.
That's the name of a book.
No, it's like a blog, like a
Yeah.
Man.
And he does the gospel lesson each week. He does some exegetical work with the Greek, and then he talks about he says I found that I just so many things that ran through my mind this week thinking about this text, but he says what parables do not do is tell us everything. In this case, how does the owner know that this was an act of an enemy and not bad seed or infestation? The narrator knows, as is the omniscience, I can't say that word, often granted to narrators. But the owner, I suspect this declaration in the story marks a place where the parable becomes something that those with ears can hear and those without cannot. He says, the worker's response to me is the very common response to the uncommon insight of the owner. It is the siren song of every fixer to go and do what has to be done. There is no question of the rightness or wrongness, no question of the worker's competence, no question of the damage that may ensue. Everything is obvious. So they are merely awaiting permission to fix it. And I was struck by that.
Wow.
He says, in contrast to the rash determination to do something shown in the workers, the owner has the wisdom of considering unintended consequences. And I think that's what we were talking about. Like, when you move forward.
One of the beautiful things about the parables is that I think, like you just said, Marcy, I think it leaves the readers, allows the readers to draw some of their own conclusions. Jesus doesn't. He doesn't lead folk to draw. He allows folks to draw their own conclusions based on their experience and what's going on. And I think that's again one of the beautiful things about the parables. But you're right about that. You know, there's no. This is not what it is. You hear the story, and you begin to draw your own conclusions based on where you are.
I also, there was something else that drew my attention to the kind of the planting and all of that stuff. Have y'all ever heard of so this is maybe an argument for not waiting and kind of, you have to kind of do something. But have you all heard of that plant called the kudzu? Darren, you know this plant? You know that plant? So I never forget riding down the interstate, and my mother, I said to her, "Look at all that. What is that green, lush, all that?" And she said, "Oh," she said, "that's kudzu." And she said, originally it was given to this country, I think by either the Japanese or the Chinese, because they thought it would be a beautiful decorative type of ornamental greenery. But
Okay.
it turns out that it is invasive and it kills native plants. So
Wow.
it was sown, as something they thought it would be positive. But it
Right.
turns out that it absolutely is the worst thing ever. And then once it gets in, it is absolutely just incredibly hard to dig out. And it can take anywhere from 3 to 4 years of kind of weeding and doing all this to get it. But there's an article about it called "The Plant That Ate the South" in the Southeast region. It's particularly pervasive and incredibly invasive. So I was thinking about that, about how
Oh,
um, sometimes you do have to kind of you have to do something. When I read Mark Davis's thing about always wanting to fix things, but sometimes you kind of have to. And I think Darren is right. There's still good work that
yeah.
has to be done. We have to continue because, and even, Dr. Carroll in his commentary for Working Preachers said, yes, the patience is necessary because we can't all assume that what we want to do is the right thing and all that. But
Right.
he said some weeds are not okay. And you have
Right.
to,
Right.
you have
Right.
to, you have
got
to
to dig
dig,
some more
you have to dig them out.
action.
You have to
Right.
root
Yeah.
them out. But I've been thinking about kudzu all week because I was like, yeah, that's an example of some weeds that are absolutely destroying some ecosystems and other, native plants to this region and this area. So
And before you came on, Marcy, I asked Darren for recommendations. I think one of the things that you know that's a challenge for us, for me, being a city boy. I don't know nothing about plants. I don't know nothing about gardening. All I know how to do is get my lawnmower and cut the grass.
oh my gosh.
That's the
Right.
only thing I know how to do. So I mean, yeah, he gave me a reference of a book that goes over, I guess, ancient agricultural,
Mm,
Bible. Because I think as we read these texts, and I think as for me, as I said over and over again, one of the most important issues to me is the issue of climate change. But we're reading ancient agricultural texts as 21st century city people,
Mm-hmm.
and we miss that perspective.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think, again, it's helpful probably to think about, Matthew's particular community as well,
Mhm.
that they're kind of in this really delicate time of figuring out how, how are we going to be, well, faithful people of God, whether that's, synagogue people or whether it's
Right.
exiled from synagogue people,
Right.
whether it's some kind of this variant of Jewish practice without a temple, and
Yeah.
will
Yeah.
this, I mean, like there's a lot going on that it's unclear, like what the future holds and what the
Yeah.
right path is,
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, that's why I love Warren Carter a lot, because he does a really good job of emphasizing, I guess, the pressure that these first century communities are under, living under Roman yoke and
Right.
Roman rule, and we just don't have that perspective. I mean, there's still aspects and vestiges of empire here, but not like what they were dealing with.
Right.
And as we read these texts, we read these from once you say a position of comfort,
Yeah.
to a certain extent, we don't face the pressures that they were facing.
Right. Well, I mean, for me, I guess, like, I always think, like, I guess one perspective I always try to take and think about these kind of texts with is like, like, if you're a community that's trying to, really make some kind of radical change, with, like, if you're the Black Panther Party, in the 70s or whatever,
Right.
that some of the people that are with you are agents.
They're weeds.
Yeah,
Right.
that they are either FBI, CIA. That somebody is. You may not know exactly who it is, but somebody is. And part of their whole tactic is to convince you that everybody is. Like, it doesn't. So you have to be. But if you spend all your time trying to figure out who that is, instead of just doing the good work that you have to do, like, it's better to focus on doing the things that you need to do than spending all of your time trying to figure out who the other person is, because eventually it'll be clear.
And I think that what you just said is true of ministry today. I mean,
Right.
I guess ministers struggle in their congregation with, if they share a vision, who's on board and who's not.
Yeah.
And as we get distracted by, well, Susie here is on board, Johnny here is not on board, and as Johnny's family on board, where we need to focus more on, let's focus on trying to make this vision a reality and execute this thing.
Right.
So you're absolutely right, and I think that same perspective was probably felt by Martin Luther King during the civil rights movement,
Right.
and that whole movement.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's very well. I mean, we won't, I don't want to name names, but it's it's very clear that his, like, where he thought things should go and where he was trying to get, where he was trying to go at the end of his life.
Right.
Obviously, many people, even his closest allies, did not continue that journey.
Right.
Right. Didn't buy it. Right.
So,
the same thing probably with Malcolm X also.
Right.
Same thing with Malcolm X.
Yeah. I think that's one of the things there, and it makes the annual recognition of the holiday so maddening, because they just focus on just the, the pablum, really. I mean, it's still powerful, but they just have no interest in understanding where he was headed, and what he was saying at the end of his life. And so that just, I can't even pay attention to that stuff anymore.
And I think that's the tragedy in that we don't discuss more on where King was headed, because then King becomes this nice little figure that everybody loves, but we don't focus on that piece, then we really don't understand who he was.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's it's an interesting. It's an interesting text. I mean, obviously, like, probably most people that listening to the text, most people are just going to be caught up in the furnace of fire and gnashing of teeth. And
really?
You know what I mean? Like, yeah. I mean, that's
yeah.
Like, I think, like, mainline Protestants and mainline folks just don't like to hear that kind of language anymore. So, like,
and I think this Carter also talks about that. Just like last week, the text forces folks that they're going to have to make a decision. They're going to have to make a choice.
Right.
Just like last week. So it's that there's that eschatological aspect of it too. That a choice is because judgment is coming in terms of what choice you make. But that piece is also too important too.
Well, and I think what you were saying in the email that you sent, is another interesting, and I think it's mentioned in they talk about it in the Solentanami text into a little bit too, is that, part of the thing that is, Well, part of what this text is trying to do, at least if you think about it, if Jesus spoke these words, when Jesus spoke these words, part of what he's trying to do is to say, like, I'm offering you an example of what the wheat looks like, and I'm asking you to choose right now which one you want to be,
Right.
and to figure out whether you are, a child of the kingdom, or are you a child of the evil one?
Right.
I'm asking
Right.
you to personally make that decision, right now.
Right. Right.
And I'm offering you an example of what
The week.
a life of the wheat looks like, so part of it is in the moment of hearing it. Every time you hear this story, hopefully it's also an ethical thing for you to say, where am I in this?
Right.
Am I the wheat that's being grown to nourish and feed and be shared, as the bread, or am I just the weed, like this,
The
just messing
darnel.
everything up? You know what I mean?
What you say? The what?
The darnel. That's what one of the, I think, I'm not sure where I just read that. Oh no, the Left Behind in Loving It. The word translate into darnel is what it's called. The seed, the bad stuff. He called it darnel, which I had never heard that word before. I guess it's some Greek thing, but anyway.
I met a couple darnels. That's not very nice.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, but you know what? Interestingly enough,
listen, Darnell, we're not talking about you.
Well, this is interesting to me too, though, because so in the Working Preacher, it gives you like commentary for that text from like 10 years ago, and because the lectionary is every 3 years.
Right.
So in 2014, Warren Carter wrote the commentary on this, and I don't know if this is before or after the book the one that he has.
Probably after, because I think that Matthew at the margins is like is like 90s maybe.
So in 2014 he did say, because I think there's this piece too that I think about a lot, because I know when I went to seminary I was going to be like, I originally said to myself, I'm going to just be like, I'm going to get up there and I'm going to just cuss people out. Well, not, but I'm going to just be righteous. And when I went to Fairfield, I think I was like, I'm going to be up there and I'm going to be preaching. I'm going to be, and Darren knows how it went, which is not what I originally thought. I'm going to be up here fixing things for these folks. But he says, while some readily divide the world neatly into Christians, the righteous, non-Christians, the evildoers, both the gospel and our experience tell us that such categories are fluid, coexistent, and difficult to discern at best.
Yes.
He said most of us, including churchgoers, comprise both plant types.
Yes.
And are not purely one or the other. In Matthew 12:50, Jesus declares his family to comprise those who do the will of my Father in heaven, a descriptor that might embrace a wide and surprising variety of people.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And so I thought, So I guess, I don't know.
No,
I still think that I'm gonna go. I want to fix. I still want to fix things, but I do, as I've gotten older in this work and continue to do more. I'm as committed to the, as I said to Darren at his installation, I'm as committed to the mission as I have ever been.
Mm-hmm.
But I just know the tactics that I kind of thought I was going to be doing and calling people out, and that's not what I'm doing. It's not what I'm doing. I don't know if that's to my detriment or to the kingdom work.
The growth piece, because I think one of the things this text does is imply that this evaluation we're talking about, it's not a one-time thing. We constantly have to do this evaluation as to what side we're on, because like you just said, Marcy, sometimes I'm more weak, sometimes I'm more weak, based on what's happening in my life. So it's a constant evaluation process.
Well, and it's interesting that we spend a lot of time focusing on the weeds, right? Because the owner's concern is the wheat, right? Like the owner's
Right.
concern,
Right there.
is look, like
Wow.
yes, the weeds will be dealt with. Like we all know that's a problem. We all know they're a problem.
Right.
But we have to focus on
Wow. Right.
what will make the wheat grow. You know,
Grow.
like
Yeah.
what's gonna allow the wheat
Yeah.
to flourish.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
So I think that there's something about that because I think you're right. I mean, I think, and especially, you know, thinking about your day-to-day job, you know, like you don't want to be encouraging people to say, hey, let's let the wheat and the weeds cohabit together
Right.
until the judgment day. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like you want to
Right.
be like, you need to get the F out of there as soon as
Right.
you can, you know, because
Right.
this is not
Exactly.
it's no time for this. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Right.
And so
Right.
clearly that there's scenarios where, you know, but I think that maybe in this, you know, thinking of that, like it's, if you're thinking about how to protect the wheat,
Yeah.
you know, if you're thinking about that the whole time, then it makes the discernment easier. You know, like if you've got a woman and her kids who are being abused, like there's no protection in them and letting them just keep getting abused.
Right.
There's no,
Right.
you know, it's not helping them at all.
Right.
Like, you know, in that way, you know.
Right.
But there might be another scenario where letting it ride and figuring it out, you know, along the way makes more sense, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah.
Do y'all think that I know agriculturally that weeds can't become wheat, but so you think there's some hope that the text says that maybe there's some possibility there could be some transformation of these weeds?
Well, you know what? Interestingly enough, kudzu has some medicinal properties. So that, you know, that maybe just, there are some properties of the kudzu, even though it's just like a bad weed. There are some medicinal properties that people have used it for certain diseases, but it's still a bad weed. It's bad.
Well,
and it needs to be, but yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
Well, so you know, no one's gonna like what I say.
Okay.
Say it.
No, like what I say necessarily, but I mean, I think that you know, a lot of our hearing of this has been shaped by you know, the concepts of heaven and hell, eternal punishment, eternal reward, you know, so on and so forth. I mean, that honestly just is not in the Bible. You know, sorry to say, you know, like a lot of the way we think of it is not anywhere in scripture. So like that's first of all.
Right.
And so I think that there is a particular Old Testament way if you're thinking of these people as all part of a community that claims to be part of the people of God. There's an Old Testament way of reading this text to say the Son of Man will send his angels. They will collect out of his kingdom all of the causes of sin and all evildoers. They will throw them into a furnace of fire, and there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. And then in a parentheses, that furnace experience will burn away, refine, and clean all of purify all of that.
Right.
Then the righteous will shine like the sun in the kingdom of their Father.
Oh,
wow. Ears listen.
Yeah.
You know, I might be hanging out with the Unitarian Universalists too much, but
there's hope for the weeds. There's hope for the weeds.
There's hope for the weeds. Yeah. There's hope. Yeah.
I mean,
and I think again,
you probably could do yourself a favor by trying to be the wheat and not have to go through the weeping and gnashing of teeth.
Yes, I would.
But if you want to keep on,
if
you want to keep on being a weed, just know we got something for you.
In the bye-bye. Yeah. Okay.
We got something for you.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
But anyway, you know, so maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm much more comfortable with just bad people, going away, but maybe we can
And
refine
that's
them too.
and that's that struggle that all of us deal with. There that we I guess we I mean I want bad people to go away too, but I think Jesus dangles a little carrot here that hey, mate, there's some hope for there's some hope. There's still some hope now. Keep hope
Yeah.
alive, as Jesse Jackson will say. Let's keep hope alive. There still could be some transformation.
Well, and it's interesting to me because even reading this, I hadn't ever caught this, I think, ever reading this before, but this seems to me one of the times, and maybe I just need to read more carefully, in the future, but they will collect out of his kingdom all causes of sin or all causes of stumbling.
Wow.
It's one of the first times that I've ever really heard, like the sin or whatever, not personalized to like the next line is, and all evildoers. Like, I think I'm more familiar with it being,
right.
like a person or a personality, like an
Right.
individual or whatever.
Right.
Of course, that's, part of our reading of everything is to make it about
Right.
everybody's individual moral. But I think it's interesting that, that the first thing that he mentions is that all of the causes of stumbling or all the causes of sin will be collected and removed from the kingdom.
That's the oppressive systems.
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
That's what I would say.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, and then and to me, like this line is saying basically like, look, there are people and there's systems. First of all, there's systems that have to be removed before any kind of justice, any kind of, positive, any kind of good harvest can come about.
Right.
First of all, then there are some people who just like you can offer them anything, and you can offer them everything in the world,
and they got
every possibility of hope and goodness and kindness, and they are just going to do evil, like for whatever reason. I mean, like that's just that's just the way it is. And we got some furnace for them.
Right.
Now, if you want to think of it as, ash, and they're gone, or you want to think of it as refining, I don't know. Like I'll give you either option, but like I think, to me, I guess what I'm saying is like it's pretty extreme. Like it's not just like the person you don't like, you know what I mean, or like kind of the a-hole down the street, or you know what I mean, or whatever. Like it's like people, it's like serious institutional systemic things that cause people to sin and to stumble.
Right.
Gotta go.
Gotta
go. People who just can't do right, like they just are committed, like they're just committed evildoers, like they just love it, like that. They're, I mean,
they're sold out for
it. We got some furnace for y'all, right?
We got some heat. You don't want that smoke. Listen, I'm gonna tell y'all don't want that smoke. You better come. But some people want that smoke. Some people want that smoke.
Some people do. Some people do. Yeah. I was trying to. I was trying to think of. It seems like maybe there's some similar things that happens in Revelation as well. That kind of language about what, there will be no. But it seems that like still even there, it's like kind of there will be no. And it's like a long list of things, but it seems like it still kind of mentions it as people, or as the doers of these things, and not just as the systemic thing.
Systemic stuff, yeah.
Anyway, that's interesting, I think.
Yeah, I love that though. I had not thought about that.
That's interesting. But you're right. And I think Case talks about that when she talks about what I sent you about what the kingdom is. That the kingdom is that it is about transformation of systems, and eventually folks are gonna have to choose. Hey, if you're gonna be a part of the kingdom, then you have to be about the transformation of systems and taking down systems, like you said, Darren, that are just no good.
Right.
And I don't know if you got a chance to read the article I sent you. I sent you an article.
I had not. I had not had a chance.
Talks about again, this whole climate change thing about what's happening with our food, that
Right.
that the climate change is exasperating, crop loss, and
Mm-hmm.
part of the issue is that systemic evils, capitalism, that you got
Right.
folks that get wealthy off this thing, and that has to change.
Right.
If people are not going to, if that's going to be more extensive suffering from hunger and from what's going on, we
Mm-hmm.
have to have change of these systems.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And it means that folks, we as the church, going to have to buy into whose side are we going to be on?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Very true. Very true.
Whose side are we going to be on? I mean, it comes. I mean, I think both of these texts last week and this week ask us. We're going to have to choose a side.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to have to choose. I mean, it may be someone read this, it may not be today, tomorrow, but we're going to have to choose.
Yeah.
And
yeah. You go ahead.
No, go ahead. No.
Go ahead, Marcy. Go ahead.
No. I'm still processing that. Go ahead.
No, I'm done.
No. Yeah. I just think I just wonder. I can't quite figure out like whether is it because people are not aware of the urgency? Like how bad things are. Like, what is it that kind of is it?
I struggle with that. I mean, yeah. because to me, when I was in seminary, what I choose to do a lot of my research on was the nuclear arms race, because I thought that was the greatest existential threat that we faced back there in the 80s and 90s. I mean, I still think it's a huge existential threat. Now I think this is the biggest existential threat that we face. And, I think you saw the story about the meteorologist who had to quit his job because he got death threats.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, I did.
I mean, there are folks that just refuse. They won't even look at the science. Mm-hmm. They won't even look at the science. I mean, they won't even look. You see what happened in in Pennsylvania yesterday.
Oh my gosh!
And see what part of the problem is we're going to a big discussion on this thing. Is as the climate gets warmer, it holds more moisture, so you're going to see more and more of
more flooding, right?
Urban in-stream flooding, and
the
homeowners don't cover that. That's on you,
right?
Or you see what's happening in the South with all this heat, and this thing's not going away till at least not till next week. The heat dome is actually getting bigger.
Mm-hmm.
So So I mean, folks just. I think they're just comfortable until climate change slaps you in the face. Right. Folks don't want to deal with it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. And even then, but I don't even believe that anymore. I'm with Darren. I just don't understand what will it take for some people. I don't know.
I think it's going to take.
So Jay, that country. I don't know if you heard about this country singer, Jason Aldean. He was the singer at the Vegas show when that guy opened fire and killed all those people at that Las Vegas. Yeah. But he has just come out with, I don't know if it's a new album, but a song on his new album called Small Town, where he basically it's a dog whistle. Saying that gun control, I don't think he uses the word gun control, but if you look up the lyrics, it's like, that stuff you're trying in the city, don't bring that to try it in a small town and you'll get, somebody today called it lynching music. And so, but this is a man that was involved in one of the most, one of the largest like mass shootings in this nation's and he's still out here talking about, you're not taking my gun away. I mean, he could have been killed. He was on the stage when the guy opened fire from that hotel room, just raining bullets down on everybody. Yeah. So I don't even think when stuff happens to you, do some folks, they just don't. I don't know what it is. What are you holding on to? Whether it's guns, whether it's climate change, whether it's believing that people deserve to be poor, and that, the racist, all of that stuff. What are they holding? What is it?
Mm-hmm.
And
Is it the denial? Is it
I'm
that denial?
baffled.
Is it that
And then
denial?
even
Television?
you got some church people that are holding on to it. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
I don't understand. I don't.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the biggest, I mean, part of the thing for me is the propaganda. I mean, like there's
Yeah.
just so much everything. I mean, because again, like I think that like mostly you have to read about climate things,
Mhm.
right? You don't
Mhm.
necessarily see reports. I mean, people will tell you that this catastrophe is happening, but most of the time they will not tell you that, that climate change and climate catastrophe is part of the cause of it. You have to have like, even no matter what stream of mainstream media you watch, whether it's the right or the left, most of them don't talk about climate change in a serious, consistent way.
Right.
To say, hey,
Right.
you have to read, a scientific article, or you have to read, something that someone posts on your Facebook,
Yeah.
and it's like, if it's at that place, if you have to read it,
Then good luck. Good luck.
Well, that first of all, not a lot of people are going to read it.
Right.
And that even the people who do read it, for the rest of it's just like Sunday morning. For the rest of their week, they're just watching and watching and watching and watching and listening and listening and listening to stuff that's telling them either nothing at all or the opposite.
Right. Right.
And it's just like, I mean, and it's the same thing with so many other things. I mean,
Yeah.
climate change, poverty, some other opinion about, prisons than
Right.
they're mostly necessary.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
like anything about, some kind of other opinion about the military, spending that's not, like, hey, this is crazy. Like you legitimately do not hear that.
No.
And the only time you hear it, like you might hear it if it's like an election season and it's like a special topic that someone might be able to get over on the other person.
Right.
But then when they get in office, they do the exact same thing. So it's like, so that to me is like that's the issue to me, is how do we come to a place where we are able to communicate to people with some kind of authority that actually cuts through,
and I think
and
from the church standpoint, that's why I talked about reading these texts. I'm very concerned that the church, we have not come out with a sound theological position on climate change. And I think it goes back again to reading these stories. And I think Jennings talked about it when he came 3 or 4 years ago. We need to go back and read these stories and see what are these stories really saying to us about what does it really mean to be a creature, be part of creation. I think we've missed that boat totally.
Right.
We have missed that boat totally. We need to go back and read these stories from their perspective and understand what it means to be a creature.
Right.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. I think that's my biggest struggle right now, is trying to figure out how to do it myself, to consistently consider everything that I hear, everything I watch, everything, everything that comes across to me as like what should be my ultimate concern right now.
Right.
Right.
As, does this really have anything to do with what I think like the vision of the kingdom of God is?
Right.
Does this, where does this fit in?
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know, and it's hard because again, like, well, I mean, I think about it, like thinking about it this way, like, you know, like you think, I mean, obviously this like children of the evil one language is a little extreme, but like there's so
Yeah.
many cases where like you just have to say, okay, like I'm going to abide with you and all of the things that you think and believe, and we're just going to keep trying to plug away.
Yeah.
You know, like even though like I just can only pray that you'll, you know, get your head out from under whatever, you know,
Rock.
like,
It is under, right?
Rock is, yeah.
Rock. Yeah.
you know,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
and you know, and that's in a lot of areas. You know, it's not just like you're overtly racist. It's like you believe that, you know, well, never mind. You know, I can't. I'm not. I'm gonna wheel it back. wheel it back before I get in trouble. But you know,
Yeah, but you're right, Darren. I mean, you know, when I was back when I was in seminary, my issue was the nuclear arms race. I remember, you all remember when Reagan was office, he was promoting this idea of promoting this system that was going to shoot down warheads from space. But the thing behind that was they believed you could win a nuclear exchange.
Right.
Yeah.
That, you know.
Right.
Well, even the idea that they thought that it was worthwhile to keep the idea of a nuclear exchange going.
Right.
That like, and that they were going to spin some story about winning, like, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, hello, like, I mean, there's a lot better options on the table. You know,
right.
We could just get rid of them.
And then, of course, the other piece of that was the piece on fear, when that they were saying that, well, the major issue, we need to, you know, protect our land-based ICBMs, because if those get wiped out, then we'll lose. When the truth was, the United States had deliberately diversified its nuclear arms into land, sea, and air, so that you could still take out an entire enemy with one system. You know, so that was even based on that lie. So it was just, like you say, you got to take what you say with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
Right.
How much?
Well, and meanwhile, this is millions and billions.
Of
dollars.
Yeah. And now with the last,
now all of that stuff is obsolete.
Now we got with the last
all of it.
This new branch of service called the
Space Force.
I tell people, are we fighting the Klingons or the Borg?
Right. Right.
Who we fighting? You know, so it's just like, you know, we're not going to use space for exploration. We're going to use it as a base for and wipe it out somebody. Come on, man.
Well, you're not supposed to, you know, the government's not supposed to be doing that. It's the private enterprise that's doing the space exploration. We want to make, because the thing is what's happened in the past is that, you know, the government has done all this stuff and like they just don't know how to make money off of it.
Yeah.
You know, they got to give it over to the private company. So let the private company start, so they know how to make money off of it right away.
Yeah.
You know, we don't want to waste any time like pretending like we're going to do it for the good of anyone else. So,
but you know what, back to you were saying earlier there, and I think what Case Winters talks about is that when she talks about we teach or preach Jesus without teaching this aspect of the kingdom, it's like, you know, like I said, we're misrepresenting the master, like the sermon I heard some 20 or 30 years ago, that that when we teach and preach Jesus, we have to talk about what he understood the kingdom to mean. And I think sometimes we don't do enough of that.
Right. Yeah.
Teaching on the kingdom.
Man,
to be part of the kingdom. And it means some radical choices that we might have to make.
Yeah.
And yet, today I saw a tweet from a guy who was debating somebody from some church, I don't know, and he said, "Can you say more about what you mean about helping the poor? Because I see in the Bible about being kind, but I don't see anything in reference to the poor." Now, I'm not sure he tweeted that when he was high or drunk or what have you.
Yeah.
But there is still this strain of folks, church folks, people who claim to have read the book, who still do not, and I actually feel it's will not accept the mission and understand what it means.
Yeah.
So it's anyway.
So are we giving them folks time, Darren, or are they eventually going to the oven?
Well, I think that the nice thing about the parable is it does let us off the hook, that we don't have to decide, that's someone else is going to take care of who's we're supposed to be left fretting in our own hearts about whether we are the wheat or the weed,
and working with the wheat,
supposedly making the right decisions, but
strengthening the wheat.
Yeah,
I like that. I'm gonna spend more time thinking about the wheat. I'm gonna let the furnace. I'm gonna let the furnace get whatever the furnace is doing. I'm gonna just keep working with the heat, because the furnace is getting bigger and bigger. But it's okay. I'm gonna work with the heat.
You just got kind of be like, look, I'm gonna treat you like wheat, but I got a strong suspicion you got a furnace in your future.
But we have to have some discernment as to because of what the wheat looks like. Because I mean, I guess the whole point of the parable is that Jesus gives the example, but we need to really start looking at that.
Well, and the reality is, like you've been saying, for a few weeks. I mean, the reality is that putting the parable aside, for us to be the wheat, we must subject ourselves to a certain amount of furnace all the time.
Right.
We know that there's stuff in us, around us, being put in us, rooting itself in us right now.
Right.
Absolutely.
That we got to subject to the furnace. Like we know that, so, I mean, outside of the parable, that's the other side of it, like
the Psalm was that Psalm 54, created me a clean heart. I mean, that's what David's trying to say.
51.
If it's Psalm 51.
Yeah. So, I mean, and I think, that's the other side. Anytime you get to this eschatological judgment situation in these parables, I mean, part of the intent is for you, the hearer, to listen to that and start thinking, how do I change myself right now?
Right.
How do I deal with this right now?
Right now.
That's the challenge.
Oh, wow.
That's the challenge. Yeah.
Right.
All right.
Right. Okay.
All right.
This is great. I'm so glad.
This was fun.
Face the furnace, nurture the wheat.
Yeah.
Let's
So next week is like 5 mini parables, right? There's 5 of them next week. The pearl, and the
right.
Something and the something. All the little
ones, right?
Yeah.
I've been doing Romans, so I don't know.
Well, and actually, I'm preaching next week, but I decided to preach. Well, I had a sermon that I had worked on before, but it's about summer, and I just think it's but it actually, I'm using the text from 2 weeks ago about rest, but it's going to be centered talking about summer and what summer brings. So, but I'm interested to talk about this one next week. So,
okay.
And can we have a conversation?
What's that?
Later, maybe we can talk about AI at some point and what you think that means. What you think because I keep hearing people say it's the biggest challenge. I mean, we're talking about all these other things that are, really important, but I keep hearing people say it's the biggest challenge that we will face in the next several years, about how it will be integrated, how it'll be used, how it will affect every aspect of our lives. And and they're saying now that, all the scientists did all of it, but they're saying now that they realize, because of the power, how powerful it will be, it's time to open up the conversation to, theologians and philosophers, other people, because it's going to have such an impact. So maybe we can talk about that one.
Yeah, that would be good, because, I in my last newsletter article, I had the 3 weeks in August, like the not the first week, but the last 3 weeks in August. I asked people to submit topics that they want to talk about.
Okay.
And that was one of the topics that people suggested.
Okay.
Was AI. So maybe, we'll have to maybe we'll have to figure out how to have a conversation about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah. Let's do
Cool
it.
beans. Okay.
Cool beans.
All right. Well, yes.
Bye, y'all.
If you come across anything that's
AI
about that
related.
that's
Okay.
interesting,
Yeah.
I will.
send it over
I
to
will.
us, and we'll.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm looking.
All right.
All right, you guys
Bye,
have a
y'all.
great week.
Have a good
Well,
week.
Marcy,
Bye-bye.
it was nice of you to set aside the rest of your busy schedule and join us. We were very happy that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I've been so crazy. It's been. But let me close with this, and I'm going to ask each of you to just kind of pray for my colleague. When I came back from Wisconsin that very next weekend, she found her 17-year-old daughter dead of a fentanyl overdose in her.
Oh my.
And so it's
God.
just been it's hard on. Obviously,
Yeah.
we're so, we're worried about her and her husband, but it's just the ripple effect for us as her colleagues and her friends has just been tremendous. And that again, yet another problem that is just rampant today,
Right. Yeah.
particularly. And
Yeah.
she was the third overdose in like 3 weeks. And it's just hard to imagine this small community in Virginia Beach having that. So just the Jackson family, just keep them in prayer. And
Yeah.
Okay.
but yeah. So anyway,
It's
been crazy, but I'm glad to be back with you guys. I'm glad
Yeah.
Good to
Yeah.
I
have you
love
back.
this is great. This is great. Yeah.
This is great. Yeah.
All right. All right.
All right.
y'all.
Y'all
Okay.
have a good week.
See y'all.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.